Welcome back to Red Glasses Talks. We have been talking about living a priority-driven life. We've had all kinds of subtopics underneath that big purpose, living a priority-driven life. Now we're on the third priority. The third priority is what we call a personal commitment to relationships. And I think in the context of how we've been doing it, it's a personal relationship with other people that have a personal relationship in their life as a follower of Jesus. They got a relationship with Jesus. But the principles that we're looking at will apply to anyone. But ultimately, the reason we do these red glasses is to help you get acquainted with Jesus and to know him and to follow him. So we're looking at the third priority, a commitment to relationships. Life is literally lived in relationship. We believe your relationship with the Lord, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people is absolutely critical. And the health of those relationships that I just mentioned are pretty much going to determine if you're a satisfied customer or not in this life. So let's look at the third one. We're going to look at this for quite a few weeks in terms of relationships. And the question I think that came to my mind was, what hinders relationships? There are a lot of things that hinder relationships. But what I want to focus on for probably, 8 or 9 weeks is the whole issue of loneliness and isolation. Loneliness and isolation. And I'm going to read quite a bit from an article or two here. Usually I don't read this much, but I think it's very important. So I hope you'll hang in with me, listen closely, and see what you think about it. The topic of the article that someone handed me was this: Gen Z is the loneliest generation, and it's not just because of social media, which it is attributed to social media some, but again, that's what the title said. Here are some quotes. At a time when we're supposedly more connected than ever, there are an awful lot of lonely people. Nearly half of Americans report sometimes or always feeling alone or left out, according to a new survey from health company Cigna. 1 out of 5 Americans has no person they can talk to. And the loneliest generation, that would be Generation Z, defined in this survey as those between 18 and 22. Their average loneliness score is nearly 10 points higher than the least lonely generation. That's the greatest generation, those 72 years old and older. Given the worrying consequences, the loneliness of Gen Z and other generations should be taken seriously, the article says. In fact, Cigna, citing a 2010 Brigham Young University study, says loneliness has the same impact on mortality as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, making it even more dangerous than obesity. So again, the research here is pretty reliable. According to a 2017 report prepared for Senator Mike Lee from Utah, several factors show the decline in our interaction with each other. 1, monthly church attendance fell from the early 1970s to the present, with 50% to 57% attending in the past, compared with 42% to 44% now. In 1974, a third of Americans spent time socially with their neighbors several times a week. Now only 19% do. We're also spending less time smoozing with our co-workers, going from an average of 2.5 hours a week in the mid-1970s to just under an hour in 2012. Families finally are also becoming smaller, and the percentage of children raised by a single parent or no parent has doubled from 15% to 31%. So, given these declining numbers, It makes sense that more Americans are falling through the cracks, losing ways to get to know other people. And if Gen Z is using phones instead of in-person interaction, that could be contributing to these young adults' loneliness. In an Atlantic article last year, psychology professor Jean Twenge highlighted how teens are less interested in driving and getting out of the house than past generations. Describing one unnamed 13-year-old, the girl said she spent much of her summer keeping up with friends, but nearly all of it was over text or Snapchat. She said, I've been on my phone more than I've been with actual people. My bed is kind of like an imprint of my body. That, my friends, is not healthy. And then from another article, briefly, called Young Americans Are the Loneliest, Surprising Study from Cigna Shows, and it goes on to give some of the things I've already covered. But here are some other results that it came up with. Many Americans say they feel lonely. 47% feel left out. 46% sometimes or always feel alone. 43% feel their relationships are not meaningful. 43% feel isolated from others. 27% rarely or never feel there are people who really understand them. That's a big one. 20% rarely or never feel close to people. And finally, 18% have people they can talk to. Only 18%. So, someone said it this way, he liked to walk alone. This is in the context of marriage. He liked to walk alone. She liked to walk alone. They got married and walked alone together. You can be together, the point is, and be alone. Another quote, one can be alone without being lonely, and you can be lonely in a crowded room. You ever felt that way? So how do you beat loneliness and isolation? And again, we're just beginning this series. And so let me give you a couple final thoughts on this. If you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, you can experience loneliness, and you can also beat it. We're going to talk about that. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you can experience isolation. Just because you're a follower of Jesus doesn't mean you're immune from that. Also, I want to give you some good news. Here's the good news. You say, well, I'm single. I'm in my 40s. I want to get married. Where are they? When's it going to happen? And boy, the loneliness and isolation and the feelings that you can go through if you're in that spot is really tough. You may be in a prison behind bars, listening to this, or maybe a prison of your own making. You feel like you're behind bars. You feel left out, and you feel lonely, and you feel nobody cares. Well, let me leave you with a couple scriptures to think about. Proverbs 18:24. A man or a woman who has friends must himself or herself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. John 15:13 through 15. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, Jesus said, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you. There is your greatest, most significant, and greatest needed relationship with Jesus. A person that will never let you down or leave you. He will always be your friend. In fact, he did lay his life down for you. Matthew 28:20. Jesus speaking, teaching them, the disciples, to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. He will never leave us nor forsake us. Do you have that relationship with Christ? He is the only one that can beat all these surveys and all these statistics and things that deal with loneliness, mental health, and other related issues that come along with this. So let me give you a real encouragement to think through the things we're talking about today and in the weeks to come. And I believe with all my heart you're going to find some answers that are going to help you beat isolation and loneliness.